following program is intended for mature audiences.
Welcome to Rudy's Revelation, finding revelation in the news and meaning in media. It's Sunday, December 20th, 2020. Tomorrow is the first day of the dark winter. Today I'll be talking back to the Sunday Talking Heads on CBS Face the Nation, where Surgeon General Jerome Adams talks about the new virus strain outbreak following the vaccinations in the UK. Also, why blacks won't take the vaccine, and assures CBS that the president has a medical reason for not getting the vaccine. Also be checking in on Sunday morning propaganda at our favorite feel-good feature news program, CBS Sunday Morning, where correspondent Seth Doane talks with Sir Paul McCartney, who was writing new music for his latest solo album, McCartney 3, and telling people not to worry about civil liberties. We'll also be tearing into the Sunday New York Times, showing how the newspaper continually mischaracterizes the facts to mislead the public. And of course, I'll be going over the week in headlines, all in the next 30 minutes. But first, I'll be taking you back to school, giving you some historical context to frame this week's news narratives. The word of the day is infiltrate.
To enter or become established in gradually or unobtrusively, usually for subversive purposes.
And the reason I get into infiltrate, well, we really don't have to go into why the word of the day is infiltrate. From Fox News, FBI stepped in after suspected Chinese spy got close to Swalwell. Other politician reports find. From the New York Post, suspected Chinese spy reportedly slept with courted U.S. officials to gain intel. From Real Clear Politics, intelligence panel Republicans, Swalwell compromised by Fang ties. From MSN, Swalwell, California politicians targeted by Chinese spy. From the New York Post, Chinese consulates in New York City, San Francisco identified as main spy hubs. Pompeo warns governors of Chinese infiltration into U.S. It's happening in your state. And this was back from February. From the American Spectator, how China has infiltrated the U.S. Many politicians have been sounding alarms about the Chinese Communist Party's infiltration of the United States. Director of National Intelligence John Ratcliffe, in a recent opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal, said that the People's Republic of China poses the greatest threat to America today and the greatest threat to democracy and freedom worldwide since World War II. In a recent interview with Newsmax, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called the Chinese Communist Party the greatest threat to the security of the American people, and indeed the free world. From CBS, 5 in San Francisco details service about Senator Feinstein and the Chinese spy who worked for her, and this was back from 2018. From the Washington Examiner, the spy who drove her, Dianne Feinstein, and Chinese espionage. Beijing's nefarious activities in the United States are very worrying. Again, from September 2018. Pompeo warns of Chinese threat to the U.S. colleges, says many basically bought by Beijing. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on Wednesday night highlighted the danger China poses to both security and free speech on U.S. college campuses, warning that many U.S. colleges are basically bought by Beijing and that they censor themselves to avoid upsetting the communist regime. Chinese data leak showed thousands of CCP members employed by U.S. and European companies. This is from the Washington Free Beacon by Jack Byer from December 14th. A leaked Chinese Communist Party membership roll shows thousands of party members employed by American and European companies. This is from the BBC. China's tainted cotton. China is forcing hundreds of thousands of Uyghurs and other minorities into hard manual labor in the vast cotton fields of its western region of Xinjiang, according to new research seen by the BBC. Revealed, this is from The Guardian, China is suspected of spying on Americans via Caribbean phone networks. And then we're going to get into our reading recommendation.
Less than 3% of you people read books.
And this is Secret Empires, How the American Political Class Hides Corruption and Enriches Families and Friends. And this is a new book by Peter Schweitzer. We're going to get into the headlines. From the New York Times, fashion mogul Peter Nygaard indicted on sex trafficking charges. Mr. Nygaard was arrested in Canada at the request of the U.S. authorities. Federal indictment in New York City accused him of recruiting dozens of women and teenage girls for sex. People say this didn't exist. From the AP, FBI says agent shot person aboard train outside Washington. There's not much on this story. An FBI agent shot and wounded somebody aboard a subway train in a suburb of Washington, D.C. This is from the 15th. This is from Stat. FDA approves genetically altering pigs to potentially make food, drugs, and transplants safer. Genetically engineering pigs so that they can lack certain sugar on the surface of their cells that triggers meat allergies or organ rejection won approval from the FDA on Monday. The regulatory clearance, the first of an intentional genomic alteration in a product with both food and medical uses, means the animals could be safer sources of not just food, but also treatments such as blood thinner heparin. Well, we'll see about that. I don't know if genetically altering things is safer. This is from Newsmax. Hillary Clinton calls for abolishing the Electoral College. This is from the 15th. Former Democrat presidential candidate Hillary Clinton called to abolish the Electoral College just after casting New York's first electoral vote for Joe Biden on Monday. Not surprising. From the New York Times, the coronavirus is mutating. What does that mean for us? Officials in Britain and South Africa claim new variants are more easily transmitted. It's from CBS 58 in Milwaukee. Trump suggests China may be behind the cyber attack and first comments on the hack. Now, if most people didn't know, this is big news lately. There's a giant cyber attack. And if you're really watching who we're at war with and who's taking over the United States, it's not Russia. It's China. So President Trump, if you look at it as a pronged attack, biological warfare, propaganda, psychological operations, and now of course, a cyber attack, you could see it's done in conjunction with Russia or by China itself. President Donald Trump is suggesting without evidence that China, not Russia, may be behind the grave cyber attack against the United States, and he is trying to downplay the impact as he comments for the first time on the breach. Again, without evidence, there's no evidence that Russia did it either. Let's see the evidence, and if anybody knows anything about cyber attacks, this was found out in the WikiLeaks from the Ed Snowden revelations that cyber hacks can be made to look like other state parties committed them. So we really don't, there's no real way to know. This is from The Hill. FDA investigating allergic reactions to Pfizer vaccine reported in multiple states. Now, this is after allergic reactions were reported in the UK, and now, of course, there's a new strain right after the vaccinations come out. This is from MSN, the Associated Press. Overdose deaths far outpace COVID deaths in San Francisco. A record 621 people died after drug overdoses in San Francisco so far this year, a staggering number that far outpaces the 173 deaths from COVID the city has seen thus far. This is from the Sun. We usually don't dive into the Sun, but deadly spread. New COVID strain is 70% more contagious as experts fear Southeast outbreak is racing out of control. Well, this is the start of our dark winter, folks. Get ready.
You maniacs! You blew it up!
This is from the Wall Street Journal. Zoom executive in China charged with disrupting Tiananmen memorials. U.S. prosecutors say Xinjiang Jin worked for Chinese intelligence in case highlighting the challenge of operating in the U.S. and China. Now, that headline is a little misleading. So we'll give you the lead here. This is an article from Aruna Viswanathan and Aaron Tilley. Federal prosecutors charged with a Chinese-based executive at U.S. company Zoom Video Communications with conspiring to disrupt video conference commemorations of the crackdown of the 1989 Tiananmen Square democracy protest. The detailed 47-page complaint unsealed Friday by prosecutors in Brooklyn highlights a tension global internet companies face trying to operate in the U.S. and China. The complaint, which was accompanied by an arrest warrant, accuses Xinjiang Jin with acting at the direction of the Chinese law enforcement and intelligence officers to disrupt 4 Tiananmen commemorations earlier this year. The court documents identify Mr. Jin as an employee of a U.S.-based telecommunications company. The company is Zoom, according to people familiar with the matter. Well, we all know this is part of the Chinese infiltration, if you're paying attention. This from CNN Politics. Heated Oval Office meeting included talks of special counsel martial law as Trump advisors clash. Now they're going to downplay it. Basically, the reason President Trump is calling or discussing martial law with Sidney Powell and General Flynn is they're trying to do what they can to subvert the infiltration that's going on by the Communist Chinese, and how to go about doing that, including the stolen election. This is from Reuters. China says tailed U.S. warship in Taiwan Strait. China's military tailed a U.S. warship as it passed through the sensitive Taiwan Strait on Saturday, the Chinese military said, denouncing such missions as sending flirtatious glances to supporters of Taiwan independence. China, which claimed democratically run Taiwan as its own territory, has been angered by stepped up U.S. support for the island, including arms sales and sailing warships through the Taiwan Strait, further souring Beijing-Washington relations. The U.S. Navy said the guided missile destroyer USS Mustin had conducted a routine Taiwan Strait transit on December 19th in accordance with international law. Planned Harvard balloon test in Sweden stirs solar geoengineering unease. This is a Reuters article by Alistair Doyle. An early experiment toward using sun-dimming technology to cool global warming has opponents fearing a slippery slope toward engineering the climate. Harvard University scientists plan to fly a test balloon above Sweden next year to help advance research into dimming sunlight to cool the Earth, alarming environmentalists opposed to solar geoengineering. Open-air research into spraying tiny sun-reflecting particles into the stratosphere to offset global warming has been stalled for years by controversies, including that it could discourage needed cuts in greenhouse gas emissions. The fact is that this geoengineering has been going on. Everybody sees the planes spraying. A lot of people call it geoengineering. Some people call it chemtrails. These are spraying particles into the atmosphere. It's been going on for a while. They just haven't admitted it. So we're going to go ahead and tear into the New York Times. Our first story here, Epstein associate is charged with rape of minors in France. Jean-Luc Brunel, 74, is being investigated on suspicion of human trafficking of minors for sexual exploitation. A former French modeling agent who was close associated of the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein has been charged with rape of minors over the age of 15 and sexual harassment. The associate, Brunel, 74, is also under investigation of suspicion of human trafficking of minors for sexual exploitation. He is suspected of having committed rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment on various victims, both minors and adults. In particular, having organized the transportation and lodging for girls and young women on the behalf of Jeffrey Epstein. So the plot thickens, or the conspiracy thickens, I must say. How we survive winter. The solstice arrives in the depths of the pandemic, but the season of darkness also offers lessons of hope and renewal. See, they're trying to sell you the dark winter, which is coming with this new strain. Trump contradicts Pompeo over Russia's role in hack. Hours after the Secretary of State said that Moscow was behind the vast cybersecurity breach, the president suggested it might have been China and downplayed the severity of the attack. There's an article by David Sanger and Nicole Perlroth. Here's the lead. Hours after the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo told a conservative radio show host that we can say pretty clearly that it was the Russians behind the attack. He was contradicted on Saturday by President Trump, who sought to muddy the intelligence findings, raising the possibility that China was responsible. Defying conclusions of experts inside and outside the government who say the attack was a cybersecurity breach on a scale Washington has never experienced, Mr. Trump also played down the severity of the hack, saying everything is well under control, insisting that the news media has exaggerated the damage and suggesting, with no evidence, that the real issue, whether the election results have been compromised. He's just pointing out that it's more likely China, because we're under attack by China. Biological attack, cybersecurity attack, psychological operations attack, on and on and on. No negative news. How China censored the coronavirus. Thousands of internal directives and reports reveal how Chinese officials stage managed what appeared online in the early days of the outbreak. Article by Raymond Zong and Paul Moser, Jeff Cow, and Aaron Krolik. In the early hours of February 7th, China's powerful internet censors experienced an unfamiliar and deeply unsettling sensation. They felt they were losing control. The news spread quickly that Lian Wenlang, a doctor who had warned about the strange new viral outbreak, only to be threatened by police and accused of peddling rumors, had died of COVID-19. Grief and fury coursed through social media. To people at home and abroad, Dr. Li's death showed the terrible cost of the Chinese government's instinct to suppress inconvenient information. Now, that's just stuff we already know. And we always end up tearing into the New York Times with the Sunday Review, which is the week's worth of opinion pieces and editorials. And the one we're going to focus on today, of course, is by the editorial board, Accountability for Trump. And again, this opinion piece by the editorial board, how can America rebuild democracy's guardrails and hold the past administration to account for its lawlessness? So again, if people haven't been aware, is that the left is looking to do something about Trump supporters and people that worked in the Trump administration. And they start off going, after any major national disaster or failure of government, it's essential to study what happened and why, and for no other reason to enact laws and policies aimed at preventing the same thing from happening again. From the Warren Report on the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, to the Church Committee in the wake of the Watergate scandal, from the Commission of the September 9/11 attacks to the Commission on the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, a thorough official reckoning makes for good government. The brazen obliteration of norms, the abundant examples of criminal behavior, the repeated corruption and abuses of power by the highest office holder in the land, even after he was impeached. And of course, they're going to offer no evidence. They're just calling him a liar and a criminal, even though he didn't do anything. There was a brazen obliteration of norms because we stopped behaving normally. But corruption, I mean, come on, this is the pot calling the kettle black here. I mean, it's really Joe Biden who's corrupt. In a country as polarized as the United States in 2020, making even incremental progress on pressing issues would be a win. We've urged Mr. Biden to champion an agenda based on decency. The first step is to dial down the culture wars that Hillary Clinton said we need more of. So they talk about reconciliation, but in the reconciliation, they ask if there should be a reckoning for people that believed in Trump and what Trump was doing. Committed campaign finance violations, lying to federal investigators, Trump lied, obstructing justice, just to name a few. So they name some here. There's no proof here. I'm not going to go into the links, but we all know the outcomes of all these accusations. At least 2 separate tax fraud investigations. I mean, they really have nothing. They have nothing. So what they want to do is they want to destroy, this is to build a case to destroy Trump after he leaves office so he can't run again. So we're going to leave you with the talking heads. And first we're going to go to the Surgeon General, Jerome Adams, who spars with Maggie Brennan on Face the Nation. So let's listen in.
Maybe you should hold off on getting the vaccine.
The number of European countries are now shutting down travel from the UK because of a new strain of the coronavirus.
Viruses mutate all the time. We have no indications that it is going to hurt our ability to continue vaccinating people or that it is any more dangerous or deadly.
Are you just saying we don't really know yet the details of this latest strain and how lethal it could be?
Because if this is a mutation that is more contagious,
Black Americans are dying at nearly 2 times the rate of white Americans. 35% of Black adults say they definitely or probably would not get vaccinated.
that long before COVID, there were many diseases, hypertension, cancer, diabetes, that were plaguing communities of color. And COVID just unveiled those disparities that have been around for a long time. I've talked previously about the history of mistreatment of communities of color, the Tuskegee experiments, the terrible treatment of Henrietta Lacks and her family, and how they just took her cells without her permission. We need to understand that distrust comes from a real place. The Tuskegee studies where treatment was denied to black men because it's okay to have questions. Yeah. What's not okay is to make poor health decisions based on misinformation.
This vaccine hesitancy cuts across racial lines. It also cuts across political ones. But I want highest amount of hesitancy about taking the shot is from Republicans. Rural residents, 35%. Do you have plans to have President Trump get a shot in the arm on camera?
From a scientific point of view, I will remind people that the president has had COVID within the last 90 days, received monoclonal antibodies, and that is actually one scenario where we tell people, maybe you should hold off on getting the vaccine.
Maybe you should hold off on getting the vaccine.
Talk to your health provider to find out the right time.
But that doesn't make you immune.
There's a medical reason.
That doesn't make you immune.
Well, it does not, but we know that monoclonal antibodies, if you've been administered them, actually are a potential reason why medically we would tell you to hold off on the vaccination.
Okay, so if he can't take the shot, which you're saying is for medical reasons, you think?
Well, I appreciate the question, and I would refer you to the White House. That people will talk to their trusted health providers and get the information they need to make an appropriate choice to help us reopen our economy and to get back to normal and to save lives.
Maybe you should hold off on getting the vaccine.
Yeah. And you know where that goes, right? If Trump had COVID-19, shouldn't he have some immunity to it? So if you had the disease, why would you go ahead and get the vaccine if you've already had some natural immunity to it? I mean, that whole line of questioning didn't even make any sense. So let's leave you with a little propaganda with Sir Paul McCartney, who doesn't like civil liberties. Like most of these rich liberals, they just become authoritarian over time, and they made it through their own liberty, and now they don't want you to have it. So let's listen to Sir Paul.
I say, no. And when people sort of say, oh, I don't want to wear masks, it's infringing on my civil liberties, I say, no.
No.
I'll say, no. I say, no.
No.
No. No.
No.
No. No. No. No. No. No. It's infringing on my civil liberties. So it's all in my head.
The result is an album critics have called experimental, freewheeling, and a playful gem.
Do you miss the feedback in a session working with a musician?
No.
No.
It's just a different kind of thing. I sometimes will ask my engineer, what do you think? Sort of say, oh, I don't want to wear a mask. One of the guys might have a suggestion. And I will say, no.
No. No.
If making a record is different now, so is talking about it in the era of COVID.
I don't want to give it to anyone. I don't want to get it.
No.
And when people sort of say, oh, I don't want to wear masks, infringing on my civil liberties, I say, no.
No.
No. That is stupid, infringing on my civil liberties.
Both of us had COVID tests, me at his office, right before our meeting, and McCartney has done almost no other in-person interviews. The camera crew ran things remotely from another room.
Infringing on my civil liberties.
Is this the real Sir Paul McCartney? Do you feel this is the authentic you?
No. Infringing on my civil liberties. No.
All right, that's it for us. Rudy's Revelation. Facebook, Twitter, check us out. See you next Sunday. Don't let yourself be lectured by Sir Paul and chastised by the rich elite. Defend your civil liberties. We're going to help you do that. See you next week.